Those kids show up and you don't know what they've been through and you don't know how the day is. They don't know how yours is. But if you go at it the wrong way, it could have bigger effects on the future of a child or a human being. You talk about growing as a coach. One of the biggest things that changes the way you grow as a coach is to start to look at things through a player's eyes and a parent's eyes. At some point, you get found out. And it's all based on what you do, what you say, and how you treat people.
Welcome back, Joey Hoffman, to The Young Athletic. How you doing today?
Living the dream, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a couple years since we've recorded. Obviously, we chat all the time, but just want to hear some updates. I know you started a new media company, JHD Designs.
Yeah, doing some stuff for clubs and their gears and logos and companies and other stuff. And as weird as it sounds, people wouldn't be like, oh, Joey, soccer person, this is doing that. But yeah, I started doing that, got a website. I think some cool stuff, but
Yeah,
we'll see.
looks
But,
good.
I don't think you want me here for my gear, even though it's really nice.
No, I mean, you've got so much experience coaching, and what I really interested in talking about is Liverpool, because I know you're a big Liverpool fan, and they're having their challenges this season.
Yeah, I think, and it's an interesting one because I'm going to tie it into youth soccer,
Hmm.
right? If you have a team that, like a Liverpool that won the Champions League, won the league, won all these things, and you got these players that have been there from day one and worked hard, and then all of a sudden you take your left back, Andy Robinson, he's on the bench, Robertson, and then you take your right back and you push someone who's a centre mid as a right back, and then you take the forward who you paid, who's been scoring goals, and you start doing this with players and you put them on the bench and you bring in players that haven't really earned that or really
Mm.
proven themselves, shall we say. I feel like you can have one bad result or two, and then you have that underlying. So I think the difference, obviously, we've got great players, and I'm not saying that, but I think, Jurgen Klopp, and I hate to say this person's name, but Alex Ferguson, some of the greatest managers, it's culture and it's environment. And I don't
Yeah.
think youth sports understand it's the same that trickles down. So it's like, on your club team, if you've got kids, 16 players, they sign for your team, you pick them, you sign them, and you commit to them, they should be good enough to play about half a game. Now, there could be games where you want to win the game or win the league, but do you look at it as, okay, this player's showed up to every practice, worked their butt off, has done nothing wrong, and when I sub them in, they do nothing wrong, but I sub them out 10 minutes later because of the starters better. So that all ties into the culture and the environment, right? Because that if I show up to every practice, I work hard, I went through preseason, it doesn't matter how good I do, I'm still not going to get the reward. And I think that kind of tied in with some other stuff at Liverpool is within that. And then it affects people's confidence, and then, that it all trickles. But I think Liverpool, they have an unbelievable squad. People try to give me a hard time, like text me how Liverpool. I'm like, listen, I'm happy. What we've won in the last 5 years is enough to save me over for a bit.
Yeah.
And as long as when I watch them play, there's still that excitement, there's the creativity, and we create chances, I'm okay. Would I love for them to win and win everything? 100%. But there's a difference between being a fan and being fanatical. And it's the same as a coach, right? Us as a coach is, if I choose to be called a teacher, not a coach, because I look at a coach as someone who just screams and yells. And I think that's what the mold is in youth sports, is a coach, right? You got to scream, you got to be hard, they got to throw up, and then come home and they need to go to bed. Like I don't know how about we teach them the game a bit and they understand little things. So I think to tie it back into Liverpool, I think there's a couple of things and the timing, and there's big moments in games. The last game against Crystal Palace, you give up a goal off a corner kick, just before the half and almost a second. It changes a bit. But I think, Jurgen Klopp and the true managers or coaches, and even in youth soccer, that do the best, those are ones that have the best cultures and environments because of the way they treat the players and, all those things. But you already know I talk a lot, mate. So that was a that
No,
was a long answer.
no, it was great. I think coaches can forget that culture is the foundation.
Yeah, well, because it's difficult as a coach in this business we're in, right? I don't want to say sport because it's a business because it has a business model. And if we look at it more as a business, then it won't upset us as much. When we look at it as a sport, it's upsetting because of the things that adults say to children and how they treat them. But the whole model in America is a business. It's as simple as that. So I think the reality is from the business model, you as a coach, to get recognized, you need to do what? You need to win. And the parents want you to do what? To win.
Yeah.
And if you want to make more money, you need to win. And so there is no true, for those that maybe haven't seen what development could look like, or, newer coaches to the game, maybe they're not thinking of, I care more about where my players go than where they are when they're with me, as dumb as that sounds. And so I think that model changes because now you want to win flight 3. And so you put kids on the bench that come to every practice, work hard, and love being on your team. But what is it about? And so as a coach, sometimes you have to take a step back and think, okay, is it about this 6 months because I'm proving to everybody locally I'm the best coach? Or is it a case of I'm okay with it taking a year to 3 to 5, but in my area, people aren't going to say, Joey screws over kids and treats people bad, because in the 3 to 5 to 10 to long, I don't even want to say how long I've been coaching, you always get found out, and people either want to play for you or don't. And then the true but sad thing is that most parents in Southern California, they're looking at coach rather than club first. And coaches don't get that, because you might win this year, but you might lose your 2 or 3 worst players and you think, oh, well, I didn't need them anyway. But there's always going to be that middle of the group players who the parents are good people, the kid's a good kid, they don't miss, and they won't tell you, but they don't appreciate how you treat other people. And it catches up, and that's when they just leave and you don't find out about it. So I think it's important, and it's cheesy, but I always say it's nice to be important, but it's important to be nice, and people laugh and smile. But that's how I tried to be, because I think for winning, for culture, for environment, for just the name of who you are as a human being, that's going to carry way further on than if I won flight Z, C, Premier, Bronze, Beta, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And I don't think enough people understand that.
You are also a licensed teacher. You teach the licenses for the coaching certifications. Is there any sort of talk about culture and, how we treat people in those licenses? I'm about to take my B, so I'm excited to see what they're about to say.
Yeah, I think, U.S. Soccer's done a good job about changing some things within the courses. They get bashed on social media by certain people, and those people haven't taken a course in 10 years. And some of it's total nonsense because they just don't know. There's a couple of people I see I don't follow on social media because I don't want to promote people that don't know what they're talking about. But it pops up, and a couple are like, "Oh, U.S. Soccer says you can't do rondos, you can't." It's changed, and it's changing, and I think U.S. Soccer's evolved in those ways. But I think U.S. Soccer, a degree at USC in law, whatever you want to do, they're not teaching you how to be great or the best. They leave those little things to experience because they've got to put in a course what they feel would benefit, 90% of the people that take the course. So the hard thing with the courses it's not geared to elite. It's not geared to rec. It's geared to the most. And so one of the things that is for sure on there is managing the performance environment, leading the player, leading the team, and leading. Those things I think are fantastic. But I in teaching courses is like coaching, right? I can tell you to do something, but if you don't agree or the way I put it doesn't make sense, why would you do it? Because you I'm the best coach in town already. What are you going to teach me? And so I think the courses are like anything, mate. The amount of coaches I've met in my coaching career, whether it's in a course or out of, that have maybe been the ones that really want to have a conversation about why do you do that, what makes this better, or even me sharing ideas, not me trying to educate or mentor. It's such a small percentage, but it's the same with teachers. It's the same with bus drivers. It's the same.
Same with players.
It's just a percentage of a number of how human beings are. And in their craft, maybe 15% of coaches really want to be the best, treat the kids the right way, learn and be a sponge. Maybe 25% have the capacity, but 10% just don't care enough to do it. It's like anything. But to go back to it, I do think there's been some fantastic changes. And anybody that wants to knock it can knock some things for sure. But where, as a coach, can you have someone watch 2 of your sessions and give you feedback? Because I know it doesn't happen at a lot of clubs. And then when can you go to something, obviously it costs money, but get that little bit of camaraderie and network with coaches that are aspiring to be better, or maybe they want to make more money at the club. I don't know. But either way, it's all down to what you want to get from it, right? So you could knock the courses, you could knock the licenses. They suck. U.S. Soccer doesn't know what they're doing and all this stuff. But maybe you haven't taken a license in 20 years and you don't know, so it's easier to stay on that. And then the last thing with the courses, the hard thing is the truth. The truth is the truth. There's people that have an A license that don't treat people right, and maybe they're not the best coach, but they have the license. And people get mad about that. But it's like, instead of getting mad and saying, okay, you've got your A and I'm better than you, or you shouldn't, I'm going to get my A, people then flip it and say, oh, U.S. Soccer's licensing sucks. It's like, everything we do can be flipped one way or another, mate. You know what I mean? You could be, your daughter or son could play for me and say, oh, my son's only playing half a game, Joey sucks. Or you could say, hey, my son or daughter only plays half a game. Hey, Betty, what do we need to do? Let's talk to the coach. Let's see what you need to do to get better, to play more. There's always an easy way to do it at everything we do, So I think U.S. Soccer, the courses, for me, if you have the money and your club promotes it, I think it's a good idea,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's useful and, just a sign that you're committed. Whether or not you end up being a great coach, you're at least committed to it.
Well, I mean, here's an interesting thing. If you had a son or daughter, wouldn't you like to know that the coach of your son or daughter wanted to take licenses, whether it made you more money or educate you to pick up 1 or 2 more things to make the experience better when you coach their kid?
Yeah.
I know there's a cost, and clubs, I think, should pay some towards that. But instead of bash it like people do, how about give it a try? And then you know the truth, so you can bash.
Yeah, you got to bash with some judgment, some experience.
Hopefully.
So going back to like culture and maybe the 10% or 15% of coaches that are really trying, what are you seeing in today's coaches that are pushing them to the next level, are making them become better coaches?
I think
what's the sign?
Self-reflection is huge.
Yeah.
But with self-reflection, you have to care enough to reflect. It has to concern you enough. For me, I don't want to say I'm ADHD or whatever I am, but my brain, the process of things is, there's a lot going on at the same time. I know people look at me and wouldn't think that, but. So for me, I overthink and I rethink everything, So if I'm driving home after a game, I'm thinking like, hey, should I have changed the formation sooner? Should I have said this? Should I have done this? And so that's the beginning, because it's a sign of I'm not happy with just being normal and average. It's like, do you want to be great at something? Then you need to reflect. And then the next is you need to get out of your comfort zone and push yourself a bit. And then you need to expose yourself to other people that you decide are great at what they do. It doesn't have to be soccer. It could be basketball, football. I've read some cool business books that are basically coaching. There's books, Good to Great, Built to Last, stuff like this, mindset.
Yeah.
that are really good and give you examples. But if you don't read it and think, oh, I'm going to bring that in to soccer, and one of them, I forget the exact book, but it was a business book, and it was cool, or is it mindset? I can't remember, but it basically says you want people that get on your bus that are on the bus for the people on the bus. Because if the bus changes direction and everybody gets off, you might be in trouble. So I take that, for example, like the teams I coach. I want people to play on my teams because the parents want their kid to play for me and have me coach them with that group of players at this club in this environment because we're going to have a better chance of being successful. But if you come to play for me because you think, oh, I've heard this about Joey, and that's the only reason why, or you like this player, or you like this, that we were Nike, then when that changes, you leave, and the group that I want to be successful won't be a group anymore. So I think there's a lot you can take in to tie into culture. The question just becomes, are you actually looking for that? So to go back to what you said with that self-reflection, exposing yourself to different things and reading is sitting on a sideline. You know, one of the things I've been lucky, but it's taken a lot out of my life, is as a director, I would sit and watch games all day after my games, take notes and give feedback. You know, I teach the courses. The courses have been cool to teach because it's helped me. But then it's also a way I feel like giving back, and I'm constantly picking up new ideas from people. And then I went out of the country to different academies to see how they're doing it, because in my mind, I was like, I want to learn from the people that are producing players that are selling for millions, which could equal development, I guess, and see what they do. But then I think the problem is, with soccer in America, is all of these people go to other countries, they come back and they try to do Barcelona's U12 training session, but they don't understand that Barcelona's academy, they train 4 or 5 days a week. So they've got a technical day, they've got all these days. Yeah. So these coaches come back and they do all these magnificent things and they train twice a week and they wonder why it's not working as much. And so you've got to find that balance too of, how much of this do I do with the time I have with these kids at this age, at this level? So I think you got to do a bit of everything, mate, if you want to create that, if you want to get better. And then the biggest thing with culture is accountability. And not enough people, it's just human nature that we don't like confrontation. It's not easy for a coach to be, hey, you know, I've asked you please to sit down, and if you do that again, I'm going to ask you to leave. It's not easy to do. It's not easy to have one of your better players and you're winning, or you're tied 0-0, but your best player, maybe a Mo Salah, has not played well good this game, so you sub them out with 15 minutes left and you put somebody else in. It's not easy to do. But if you don't do the things, at some point, you're not going to create that culture, are you?
The last 2 guests I've had, one's coming out later this week, VJ, and the one before was the Oxnard Pacifica football coaches.
Nice.
And both of them, you know, very successful programs and teams. But they're like, you have to compete. And if you're not competing, you got to get out.
Yeah, I think it's different. Well, I couldn't agree with that more. I think it's different in soccer, and I think the kids have changed. The environment's changed. Culture, everything's changed. You know, you go back 20 years ago, people fought for things, work hard. Like, that was just instilled. Do you know? Whereas now, you know, children are looking at influencers. You know, I want to be an influencer. What does that mean? That means you get to do nothing but videotape it and make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so society isn't really pushing those things: respect, humility, discipline, hard work pays off, and then competitiveness. And so as a coach in any sport, it's different in soccer because we have more game-like activities, I'm assuming. But in everything you do in a practice can be for something. You can compete for something. You know, people will disagree, but it's like, hey, these 4 against those 4 losers get a push-up. A push-up. Is that punishment? I don't know. But could it create competitiveness? And so I think for me personally, and this isn't I'm not saying back and anybody else does it. But everything we do at practice has to be competitive. There will be someone that wins, there will be someone that loses, and that's it. But I think in society, it's almost changing that. Like it's just, here's your merit badge. You participated to say today. And I think that's okay because kids should participate and do things. But I think we're taking away that fact of, okay, if you wanted to have a chance to be great at something, might not be soccer with me, but maybe the soccer competitiveness pushed you in something else to where you became the greatest at it. And so I think it's important that we understand in any sport, is it bad that you compete? And I'll tell you why. The interesting thing is when you go for a job, you're competing. When you get the job, if you want to make more money, guess what you're doing? You're competing. If you're just okay with where you stand and you think, hey, I'm only going to work 20 hours this week, but I expect a full 40-hour paycheck, and you do more than me and you got the raise, but that's not fair because, hey, we're both on the same team. It's just not real life, you know? And so, but I think you have to find the balance, and you have to really, it's not an easy balance, but there's still, like you said, especially that sport.
Do you think there's I mean, you kind of talked about it, but do you think there's a sort of a pushback on people trying to be elite and really be great themselves?
I think there's more and more people that have children in sports that have not competed. And I think there's more and more people that have kids that, you know, would have liked to have played a sport, so they think they know what it is. There's more and more people that want to win in a sport but haven't done it at a higher level. There's more and more coaches in the game that want to win and create an environment but have never done it. And so what they do is they follow and listen to people that haven't done it or haven't created it. And so they think it's something. And then I think it's different because you could do everything you could to be elite or great, but you might not ever get there. But are you still willing to try hard to do it? And it goes back to those base things, you know. There's out of the kids, all of the years I've coached, the ones that have been successful, it might not have been in soccer, but they compete and they've become great at something and successful. So instead of saying great, let's say successful. Right? Because success can be at different levels. And so even when I say elite, someone watches, oh, he hasn't coached elite. Okay, cool, I haven't. Like, I'm okay with that. My definition of elite and whatever, I'm going to change it to success. And I've had some successful human beings I've coached, whether it was for 6 months, 3 years, 5 years, go on and do some cool things. And I'd like to think that I had a part to play in their success and changing some of those habits so they understood, if you have the chance or want to have the chance, here's some things you got to do.
Yeah. And just also, it's a chance, you know?
That's it.
You have to put in all that work just for an opportunity.
Yeah, but it's just easier for people not to, isn't it? I mean,
yeah.
I look at it today, and it's easier for parents to say, oh, that looks good. I want Patrick to coach my son or daughter, and we're in. And then, you know, you look at, they miss a practice every other week, you know, and then a year later, you've missed a half a season. But then you might be upset on why is your son and daughter not as good as the rest of the kids, and why aren't they getting playing time? I go back to, it's the same thing. You know, you go back 10, 15, 20 years ago, people would not pay the amount of money they're paying. But if they did, their kid would be there.
Yeah.
And the other thing, too, is I'm not saying this about parents because I think it's coaches, it's parents, it's kids. There's just far too many people making excuses. Do you know what I mean? It's not easy to look in the mirror and say, you know what? Hey, I missed half my practices and it sucks, and I'm sitting on the bench and I'm going to work hard. You know, it sucks, I'm sure, as a parent to sit there and look and your son or daughter's not playing. But the easiest thing then to do is be like, oh, Patrick sucks, Joey sucks as a coach. It's not easy to say, hey, we're going to change. I'm going to start taking you to practice. And if you miss, it's only for these reasons.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be very transparent.
Yeah,
yeah. Going back a little bit, you said, you know, you've been coaching for a little bit of time now. What are some like learning milestones for you that like really changed how you coached or how you approached, managing the team or setting up a session?
When I started out, I was very sarcastic
Mm.
because people, I don't know why I say I could tend to be funny. But it was very sarcastic with the players, even in game coaching. I,
That's hard to, as a
yeah,
player, that'd be hard to understand.
exactly. And so early on, I had a director of the club above me say to me, his feedback was that. And at first, just like I've said, I was kind of like, well, you don't know. It took a while.
Yeah.
And it was still negative and it was excuses. If I was being honest, it was excuses. And then it got to a point where I'm like, you know what? If you're playing for me, you shouldn't get sarcasm. You should get a simple answer. So that was a beginning. And then when I was younger too, I thought my game coaching was decent. My practices were good, but for my, I guess, level and grading myself weren't good enough for me, not compared to anybody else. And so then I specifically was like, I need to do a better job with defending specifics. And so then I was like, okay, I'm going to research and try and do some more. And then I keep trying to do variety of different activities because I don't want to be like coaches around me at times doing the same session. It could be teaching the same topic, but it's a little bit different. So the kids enjoy it. And then, there's been little things that have happened in my coaching careers with players that are quite extreme, which has changed the way I deal with and interact with players and think more of them as a human being and then a soccer player second. That's a big one for me because it's just that human element, right? It's like those kids show up and you don't know what they've been through and you don't know how the day is. They don't know how yours is. But if you go at it the wrong way, it could have bigger effects on the future of a child or a human being. And so that happened. And then, I started to do other things and get involved. But I always kind of questioned, like, hey, can I do that? And I did it backwards because I actually had opportunities to get involved in higher level things sooner, but I didn't do it because my dad was who my dad was, and I didn't want to get into anything because people then would be like, "Oh, it's Steve's son," and I never wanted to be Steve's son as a coach. So I got higher licenses, I did more time, so I think I pushed myself all those, and not because I didn't appreciate everything from my dad and everything he's done. He's fantastic. I love all of that. It's just I never
Very
wanted
successful
to
coach.
successful,
Yeah.
and I just never wanted to be considered that. So I took my time to do the things, and then I think throughout my career, it's just been little life things as well. Like life changes things. I think I've evolved as a human being, but hopefully as a coach. And I think the level of detail now, the biggest one is the level of detail of teaching but seeing that level improve quickly is really cool. And what I mean more by that is a lot of coaches will stand and scream and ask players to do things during games, but they haven't talked about that process or taught that way in a practice. And so I'll give you an example. If you've got a team and you're talking about them pressing higher up, some people call it repress, whatever it is, pressing higher up on the field. But if you haven't talked to them about, okay, when this player goes here, you would tuck, where would you go? And then using guided discovery by asking the players, all of these things have been really cool, I think, things that have formed me. And then there's also been bad experiences. It's I talked
Yeah.
last time, it was like one of my best lessons I ever learned from for coaching was my high school soccer experience, which was not good at all. But I would never change it because it makes me who I am as the coach. And so I think it's all of those pieces along the way. And then some of the opportunities, some of the opportunities when I was at LMU, that was super cool with the Philippines to travel for, even though it was a couple of months, whatever it was, in the World Cup qualifier. That was a cool experience. ODP, scouting, regional stuff, Ventura College. Every one of these experiences is super cool. And I think the last thing is like never wanting it to just be that. Do you know what I mean? I always wanted to be more than just, a decent coach in the city of Ventura. I always wanted to be more than just a decent coach in the county of Ventura County. I wasn't saying it to myself. It wasn't in my mind.
What did
But
you want to do?
to be honest, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Originally, years ago, I wanted to coach a U.S. youth national teams. For whatever reasons, that doesn't work. So then it was like, okay, I'm going to create my own little environments to have the most success as possible, treat the people that I want to treat them the way I do, the players, a style, a brand. And that was super cool to do and build. It just takes a lot of your life, you know?
I mean, if I were to sum it up, I think you and I see things pretty similarly, and the way it's like, I just want to change lives, you know?
Yeah, as dumb as it sounds too, it's make people laugh and smile, you know? And you can laugh and smile and learn. I mean, this is the interesting thing is that there's so many parents and coaches, like I said, that maybe have not been a part of something. I don't want to say I've done things at a high level, but let's just say at a higher level or competed on a team where they really enjoyed it and they were successful. They don't understand that the experience can be fun, you can learn, and you can win, and you can develop. The question is, are you willing to give it a try and sacrifice? Because if you lose, it doesn't look good. But who doesn't the losing look good on? It comes down to us as a coach or you as a parent, right? And I think that's the same thing. Me as a coach, I look at it now when I teach the courses and I say, you always want to think about how you're remembered by those players in 5 years and 10 years.
One of the things I've sort of feel like I've improved as a coach in the last maybe 6 months was just like believe in your players.
I think it's an interesting one. From a business standpoint, if you pay the same as the next person, shouldn't you get the same? Right? Even though whatever. So my point is going to be, if you're the best player on my team, you should get the same services as the worst player on my team. Worst. What do I mean by that is, I've had multiple players that I've coached in my X amount of time that came from a B team to my A team that actually went on to a Division I college and the rest didn't. So I think the difference is that you have to put your faith in every one of those players,
Yeah.
and you give them the same. You give them the positive when it's positive. When it's not earned, don't lie. When they need to fix something, you help them fix it. That's all you got to do. And the differences you'll see is like with anybody, a little bit of belief, right? A little that you actually care more than I'm just a dollar sign or, whatever it is. You'll see people and kids the same. And that's all that happens. It's like, I always look at it because I coach teams and 3 months, 6 months, a year later, the players that when I came in, I looked at and thought, and it's happened on both of my teams kind of currently that I've started. There's 1 or 2 players at the beginning. I said, give it 3 to 6 months. I haven't told them, but this is my mind. They're going to start. They're going to do, and because they work hard, they show up, they're positive, they don't complain. You don't have to tell them, hey, stop, Those people are the ones you just talked about, which is success. They have that in them. The only question is, you as a coach, and you're talking about it, you don't show them that they can do it. You might tell them, but you don't show them. And how do you do that is when it's my turn to go in, and I go in for you. Let's say you play center forward, you score no goals. I go in and I score a goal. And then you sub me off 5 minutes later because I'm the worst player on the team. What are you showing that person? If a kid goes to take a test, me and you, and I sit down, we get the same answers right, we get all the same questions and everything right, but when you get your test, it says 100% and mine says 75, but we do the same thing. Do you think after a while I'm going to get fed up with this class and this school? And that's what coaches don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it's not as bad as that. I don't see it. I don't see that many bad examples on the field.
Not to do this, but I'm going to disagree with you.
Yeah.
I think it's there's a lot of things in youth soccer. I don't want to harp on it or whatever, but I think everything trickles from the top down, right? And so all I can do is in my environment with my team, this is how we speak to each other. This is how we treat each other. Here's the accountability,
Do you have a a slide deck that you share with your team or your parents at the start of every season, or maybe with a new team that says, this is what I'm about. This is what, my values are. This is what my priorities are for this team. This is what I expect to be in 2, 3 years.
Super important that first of all, yes, I have this. And as a director, I had this with my coaches in a PowerPoint. I think these are the little pieces and details, right? Is that when you start off, the expectations need to be understood. And for a lot of coaches and or teams or what have you, they just kind of think we assume we know that, right? And so that is huge because
I'm developing my own because there's no like example for it at the club or any club that I've been to.
well, it's the same thing. You got to look at the whole package as a coach. You talk about growing as a coach. One of the biggest things that changes the way you grow as a coach is to start to look at things through a player's eyes and a parent's eyes. Doesn't mean you have to change everything you do, but if you start to look at it through that way and you say, well, that doesn't look right, it's probably not right. If I'm running a camp, right? I'm directing a camp and there's 5 coaches below me and I can see it from above. And I've got 2 or 3 dorm parents, which or could be parents, they're not coaches. And I step back and say, hey guys, this is a shooting topic. There's 5 groups, 15 in a group, so maybe 100 people. What do you see? And if they turn around and say to me, why are they only using 2 goals? They're not coaches. But are they right? So it's the same from a parent's perspective. Another example, I sign my son up for your team, right? And if I sign my son up for your team and you say to me, hey, I'm going to do this, and then you don't do that, technically you lied or you're not fulfilling what you said, whatever that is. And if you don't explain to me or tell me why, still not the same. But it's not easy for us, I think, as coaches to juggle all these things.
Yeah.
You just expect it to be okay and you hope it's going to be okay. And no one throws a bottle at your head during the game when you're coaching. You know what I mean? So I think you want to evolve as a coach. You want to evolve and make the environment better. There's all these little pieces you think about, right? So when people play for me or parents do, they know what to expect.
Yeah. It's important.
I would hope. But if you choose to look at it that way and that they're customers, right, and that the parents are, because technically they are, not that we do everything for them, but there has to be that piece in it. Is that at the end of the day, your job and my job as a coach, from a business standpoint, is that next year I have 15 or 16 that will pay for my services. But if I think I'm a rock star and don't talk to me and I do this and you do all these crazy things, at some point, the fans of your band, they don't come to the concerts anymore, mate.
Yeah, I think I know who you might be talking about. But yeah, I've always, I don't know if I've told this to you before, but I was afraid of talking to parents when I first started coaching. But this was like 10 years ago, and then I went off into the real world and did some other things. And now it's like I want the parents involved because I want everyone to understand what we're trying to do.
For me, it's little things too. It's like I would say to coaches, like you as a coach need to send some emails and texts or have communication with parents. Even if you say, hey, I'm willing to communicate, but you never do, then you're saying, yes, I can, but then you're like, it all goes through this person. So I think that's an important one. But years ago, and like I said, I'm kind of write everything down. I go back to great. Okay, so if you want to be great at this job in youth soccer, in this arena, are you taught the things to be great that help you be successful?
No.
And I don't think you are, because the parent side of it is a big part of it, right? So if we're talking about engaging with the parents, if you don't do it, you're silly. Now, if you're at an MLS club or one of these top ones that are putting Division I athletes consistently or pro players, you don't really have to care, which is sad, but it's true. But if you're below any of that and you don't pay attention to these things, you're not going to have success. You're not going to help players. And at the end of the day, what happens is for small clubs in small areas, big clubs in big, at some point you get found out. And it's all based on what you do, what you say, and how you treat people. And the hope is for me that I've been to different parts of Southern California and all over, and that people will either say, "Hey, he's a pretty good singer," or he's pretty funny, and you know what? I trust him, and he wouldn't lie to me or treat kids or people bad. That's the ultimate hope. And is if you get known for that, and then afterwards they're like, "Oh, he's an okay soccer coach." I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the highest compliments. Is just, yeah, I can trust that person.
You hope. You would hope, mate, at some point. But it's always difficult because of expectations and what people want and what they don't want and what they actually say, but they don't mean. Like what is the intention of the player and why are they signing up to play for this team? If the parents were to say, I just want my child to be in a positive, fun, learning environment with someone that doesn't berate them and teaches them the game, and that's the 5 boxes to check, you're fine. But what happens is when those parents check those 5 boxes and your team has a bit of success that year, then they start to believe that anybody can create that success for your child in this environment. And they're like, oh, we want C double triple elite A team. They don't realize when you go there and your kid sits and doesn't play and isn't confident, they don't realize that that comes from a culture, an environment. A coach plays a big part in those things.
One of my biggest, like, I don't know about mistakes or regrets, but last year, almost 2 years ago at this point, I had a silver team in Coast, and I had a chance to play EA with the same age group. And I should have just taken the whole team, but I had tryouts, I had new players come in, and the culture wasn't set, and we just crumbled.
You pulled an Arnie slot.
Kind of. That's exactly what happened, yeah.
But that's what happens. This is another piece of the puzzle, right? If you play for me and you do all the things that you said, and you've been on the team for a year, I'm committed to your kid because you've done it for me. You've learned, you understand the things I'm asking, and we interacted. You're coachable in my style or whatever. You have had success. But once again, you just now have this great success. And at the end of the year, because you think you're good and you get to move up to this different level, now you cut those players. You've got to start with another culture, another environment, people learning, people doing things. You don't know how they're going to react. And so I think that's a difficult one. But then it's another interesting one because there are positions in soccer and all sports where, hey, I have a buddy of mine in England and he got promoted to the Premier League, in the Premier League, coaching a Premier League team. And one of the things he said was his regrets was the opposite, is that he backed the players that got them into the Premier League.
Really?
So it's a hard, you've got to find a balance, don't you? How do you keep a good core of the ones that have the characteristics you want, that create that in a part of the environment you want, and then incorporate a couple slowly to that to build instead of totally change? And I think that's probably a little bit what Slot's going through as well, is that shift of it. And then his actions, it's a little bit like you're talking about. You change, you add these players, and you're kind of showing people that we're a part of something successful, that what you did doesn't really matter as much because I'm going to take this player because we paid 120 mil for him. So
fortunately, my mistake didn't have the kind of consequences that his does. Yeah, I mean, what are they, like 10th right now?
Yeah, I don't even want to say, but I know they're below Everton in the table. That's not a good day for Liverpool. But
the other news I saw today, and that we talked about really briefly, was that Vinny doesn't want to sign a new contract with Madrid because he's not getting along with his new coach. And, my perception of the coach is that he's very, very demanding, but also very particular on what he wants. And the question is, like, are managers taking too much of the game away from the players? Are they taking too much control?
That's a difficult one because if a manager wants to have success, they have their idea of the style, attacking, defending, transition, pressing. They have their idea of characteristics of a player, characteristics of the person and a player. And if for whatever reason you don't fit that, they're under pressure. So look at Madrid. I mean, not that they're doing bad, not that they're doing great, but I do know they lost Liverpool in Champions League. But the reality is his expectations on him trickle down to his players. And there's only one expectation at Madrid, as well as most top clubs, and that's winning trophies. And if he's looking at it thinking, hey, for whatever reason, this person's not fit in, who knows what happens behind the scenes, he doesn't fit in this style, then he doesn't fit. I mean, Guardiola's done the same thing over the years at City, but he's had some great success. But I go back to, though, it's the same analogy I said to you, right? Is you want people on your bus that are on the bus for that group of player, those group of people, so you'll have success. Maybe he doesn't feel he's got the right people on the bus, and he needs to let people know also he's in charge. And that's the other thing, and I go back to the accountability piece, is that you, as a leader, as a coach, as a boss, if you're going to have some success as well, people need to know that you are in charge. And it sucks to say, but that's when you do things like that. And so I don't think they're taken away from the players, because you're never going to have a manager if you get Vinny and he's scoring a hat-trick a game. If Vinny plays 10 games and scores 8 goals, he's not going to have any problems. That very rarely happens. But the funny thing with Madrid is they do the same as what is being done to that player. Right? They did it with Trent. They did it with Mbappe. They did it with other players where they have them secretly, don't sign your contract. We make you more money than you come to our club, and we don't pay as much. You pay less taxes in Spain or whatever. So it's an ironic thing that's happening. But I do think for Madrid, the longer stuff like that goes on, it sucks to say for the player, but they need to go quicker, bring in someone that wants to be there quicker. And that ties in with all the stuff I'm saying to you, right?
What if you can't do that? Let's take it back to the youth level. What if, the coach and the captain aren't seeing eye to eye? You can't just go buy another captain. How do you mend those relationships?
Well, I think relationships, it's not so much amending it. You build them over time, don't you? And I think the reality is that it's just like expectations. You can't just say you're expected to do this and that's it, and everybody follows it. That happens over time. Respect happens over time. Even with coaching the little tiny kids, right? They, at some level, you build respect or rapport with them. Right? If they think you're mean, they're not going to want to play for you. You know what I mean? So I think even you're talking about a club level with the captains, if you don't see eye to eye with the coach, at some point, you want to do everything you can to get it. But at some point, hey, there's one person who's making the decisions, and that's me. And because at this point I have a little bit more experience, we're going to go with this. We can discuss it later or off to the side. But it's the same type of things, just like the pro level. If you shout at me during the game and we have issues, we're going to sub and we'll chat about it, and I'll explain to you, hey, it's okay to be upset. But this is how we communicate, and we'll talk about that later. When you're ready to relax a bit and go back in, I'll pop you back in. It's an adult, it's a kid, it's a soccer, it's in every environment. If you scream at me in a game, oh, what are you doing? We got a slight problem. It didn't just start with that. You know what I mean? People don't just start with that. But when it gets to that, if it gets to that, once again, everybody's looking. What's Joey going to do? Okay, sub. Come on out. So everybody understands that there are accountability, and all of the things I say, I actually mean, and that's what I'm going to hold everybody accountable to. So you can have the discussions, but ultimately, I'd say the biggest thing is for every kid on a new team that I coach, everybody says, hey, when you say, hey, who's going to come to practice and who's going to be at everything, every parent in the meeting raises their hand. We'll be at everything. Oh, hallelujah. I believe. And then what you find out as a new coach in 3 months, 6 months, a year, I have an app that tracks attendance. I see who actually means what they says. And then at the end of the year, now I have a choice, right? Do I need to make the majority of my team that are in the same boat for us to be successful? What does that mean? I might have a team that is just fun, and I need it all to be just fun. Because if the top 2 or 3 players want more and whatever, they're going to leave me next year anyway, because they should. If I have a whole group that is talking about college and pro and all this, but there's only, there's 10 of them that don't want that, those players are going to leave. So it doesn't really matter, what it is, but you've got to figure that out and set. So for me personally as a coach, I want to coach kids that come to practice, work hard, the parents are positive and committed with them, and they can communicate properly, or I can help them with those things, and they work hard. That's all I want to coach. I don't have to tie in that you're great. We're in flight, EAAA, GA, ECNL, PO, MLS next, or after next. But that's what I want from players. And as long as I can get a majority of people that follow those things, not me, we will be successful.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone's going to be pulling in the same direction.
That's it. And honest. Honest, and that's what you want. And then the last thing I would say is that for me as a coach, if it's not about me, I have to also acknowledge when I've got a player on my team that should move to a higher level. Yeah. And I let them know that. Yeah. Now, there's a difference between just saying that, because people are going to be like, what I mean by that specifically is if I'm coaching a player and I've coached them for 6 months and a year, but I feel that they are at that level to have that potential at some part in their career to maybe achieve, and they want that, and it makes sense for them as a player based on coaching them for 6 months or a year, I will let them know. If after a year I think, you know what, my team's a lower level, but I think another year is good because you're learning, you're positive, you're confident, and you're picking up this stuff, you're a leader, and it's good for you, then we could have a conversation if you had it. But that's a difficult one as a coach, and not enough coaches do that, and that's the truth.
It's hard to give up your best players.
Well, no, they're not yours.
Well, you're right.
That's the problem. You don't give up players. Here's the funny one, and I hope you clip this for social media. Players don't get stolen. You don't have to give up. All of these things are negative, when the truth is, if a player leaves your team, they weren't stolen. They just went for a different opportunity, or someone spoke to them in a way different that they chose to do that. Sometimes it's for better. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes people learn lessons. But the next is and like I'm saying to you is, if you have culture, if you do it right, then your best player that leaves, you should just have another group. I've had plenty of teams where my best player, not plenty, but teams where my best player left, we actually played better. So it's an interesting one. But I think at the end of the day, though, I can take a step back and say, in my mind, my job is not where the players on my team are now, but where they go. And that might mean that in 6 months or next year, a birth year change, who knows, that I speak to a parent and I explain to them that if your son or daughter wanted these types of opportunities and you were willing to drive or whatever it is, I provide that information to them in places that would best fit, which is against all the grain of the business model.
Yeah. What are some, I don't want to say easy or quick, but just simple things that we can do better as coaches or as players to take the next step?
I think the first one for a player is as simple as it is going to every practice. I think for a player is getting a ball against a wall, to get a little piece of chalk, right foot, one touch 50 times, 3 steps, left foot, back up, do more circles, try and hit the circle. I think you can do a lot as a player. And I think I've seen it a little bit more on the news lately with a couple of high-level players, that people's perception is that they were just great. You know what I mean? I think Andy Robertson mentioned something in an interview. But I think people think that the players are just great. They would be blown away on the extra that they did to be great. So I think for the players, anytime you're doing something with a ball, and I'm not going to say juggling, because I know a lot of people do that and push it, but if you can juggle 1,000 times, doesn't make you a great player. Is it good to have good ball control? Yes. But don't go in your backyard and juggle and get to 1,000 and be like, oh, I'm going to be pro, right? Balance the stuff you do. I think for a coach, it's the most important thing The most important thing for a coach, I would say, is do you ever look at what you do in practice and gauge if you actually see success in a game? So whether you say, because everybody says, oh, I play great soccer, and I've watched a lot of videos and I've seen a lot of games. No, you don't. You're lying to yourself. So if you're going to work on these style of things, then you need to look at the test, which is the game, and see if you as a coach have success. If you think your team's good defensively, organization, on transition to from attack to defense, show me. Watch it yourself. Because I think too many people believe their own hype. And I think at the end of the day, for me, the game's evolving. So I would say as a coach, what are you trying to work on in practice? And are you seeing it happen in games? For some coaches, it needs to be more detailed, right? When we're playing in a 4-3-3 against a 4-4-2, am I noticing that my right back is tucking as my left back steps, so it ends up being a back three to press on the left side? Am I getting my right back, left back tucks? Or is my right back tucking and become a six when my left back attacks? If I see that in a game, I know I'm teaching. But if those habits aren't happening, another one, and the same, a simple concept as do your players think ahead? And here's a test for all the coaches, and it happens all the time. I watch your team play. They kick the ball wide. Your right forward's very fast. They cross the ball into the box, and guess what? Nobody's there. And coach says, what are you doing? Well, that's a sign that you in practices don't talk to your players about what's the next step. Where would you go next? That's you as a coach, because you're not planting the seeds of what's the next step. So the difference for me would be is I would notice that on a newer team. And then as that's going to happen, I'm talking in the game to not the player on the ball, but my left forward, my center forward, my 10 about, hey, start your run. So game coaching is huge for me, but not the person on the ball. You're planting the seeds of the timing of runs. When should you make the runs? And now if as the season goes on, ball's getting played wide, forwards getting their cutback, tapping goal, I'm good. Are we thinking a step ahead? So I think for a coach, I mean, we could talk forever, mate, and you know I can. But I think there's little things that you can do to think. And so for the coach, if you're not planting seeds of thinking based on how you talk and teach, it's not going to happen in a game. So if I don't ask you questions in a game, and if I don't ask you to fix things in a game, I get it. But what I ask in my practices, and I think you've seen it, is I'll give you a passing pattern, and I'll give you a minute to figure it out. Number one, who are the leaders that step up, that were listening? Is that what you'd like in a game? I probably would. The next is who's solving the problems and organizing. That's what you want. Whereas as a coach, it's very easy to say, you pass here, you run there, you do this. But now you've taken away the element of they don't have to figure it out. They don't have to lead. They don't have to fix. You know, it's up to the captain. Not my fault. How many times in the game you get scored on and someone shouts, oh, whose man is that? I don't want whose man is that. I want people to step up and fix it and say, hey, that's all right, but you got to get a bit tighter. But if I want them to coach and them to teach, they need to do it in practice. Same with thinking the next step ahead. Everything you do in your practice needs to be the players thinking ahead. Can you get them playing quicker on the ball? And you can restrict that in multiple ways. And then are they solving problems? Are they talking? Are they teaching within the activity in the game? A lot of these things for me, I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or different, but that's how I see teams that were successful. Liverpool had Jordan Henderson on the field, had Verge at the back, has had people like a Steven Gerrard that have won games that they should never have won. How did they do it? Some of it was the manager. Sometimes the manager wasn't good. But how did they do that? And you look at some of those characteristics. And so as a coach, a huge thing is empowering your players to fix, to lead. So when you get to a game and you get scored on, it's not like, oh, it was your fault, the goalie sucks. It's a case of, that's all right. What do we need to do to fix it? Okay, you start talking. I want my two center backs. I step, you go. And so I think for a coach, it was a long answer, but it's a case of what do you really like at a great in-depth level teaching your kids by all of the things you tell them, show them, and how you do it,
Yeah, I'm just thinking about my practice sessions and what they're looking like and trying to tweak them,
No, it's good. I mean, a little one is like I said, right? You start with whatever. I normally start with different passing patterns, but they have different layers of thinking. So it's never just, I mean, it might be repetitive, you and I pass in one touch. But when we progress, it can't just be I pass to you and I stand still. There has to be a next action. So now, as dumb as it sounds, the person that kicks a ball on your team, in everything you teach them in all your practices, they do not stand. Because if you don't realize that when you teach that in a practice and they do it, you can't get mad. So now if you think pass, move to the right, at least now you're programming your players to pass and move, right? If you're doing an activity where the players are turning, if you don't ask them to open their hips to check their shoulder, you're programming them to turn into pressure, lose the ball. They're not scanning. So even in your basic activities, you progress. The next is a smaller possession activity. It has to incorporate the same things you've been teaching, the thinking, the moving, the body positioning. You know what I mean? The scanning is huge. And then you also have to sprinkle in creativity because we can't always have the best body positioning. But if we scan and we do a little flick, that little flair is why people pay big bucks for tickets. That's why people go. So for us as a coach, I think we've got to find that balance and look in the bigger picture than just my cool activity that I want to coach. And these little people will do exactly what I say. It's like, well, hey, do I care more about this activity and how cool it looks? Or do I care how this applies to my team? My biggest thing is, hopefully, after I coach a team for 3 months to a year, is that if you came to watch them play, you would see things and think, that's kind of cool how they understand that or they're organized. And if I don't do those things in the practice, I never get that end result. But then it's more about me, isn't it? And shouting and, oh, look what I want. And, hey, let me post about every player that I sent to it's not about me.
Yeah. No, I think about passing patterns and like I do specific patterns that I want to see in the game. Don't waste that time.
I think what I would say is rather than the pattern you want to see in the game, more of the movements. So I don't look at that stuff as much anymore for the youth because to me, it's like a formation, If you're so stuck on a formation, then is it difficult for your kids to play the soccer you'd like to play? Is it okay for your left back to step up 15 yards because the other team's outside forward plays deep? But if you're so frigid in what you do, they're not adjusting based on what needs to happen or what the game shows them compared to what the pattern is you like to see. Maybe they play against someone who's faster than them and your pattern doesn't work anymore. So now the pattern is good. It's a good starting point, but there has to be flexibility on why, right? So instead of being about the pattern, it's more about the movements, the basics that you want them to do so it would help them in a game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a whole world of trying to figure these things out and empower the players to figure it out themselves.
It is, and I think that...
and you have to have a lot of little things right. Have to have the foundations right.
That's huge. And I mean, honestly, though, at some point, it's not easy as a human or as a coach to take a big step back and say, okay, I think I'm a nice person and da-da-da-da-da. But then you step back and you go, let me see my actions. So as a coach, do you take a big step back and say, after you've already said, oh, I coach great soccer and I'm about the kids and I did the, and then when you take that next step back and you see, well, I borrow players from other teams and they play more than mine. Oof. Do I really care about my kids? And then you look and like you kind of said, the lower player on my team, to be fair, in the last 3 games, they've made no mistakes, but I don't play them as much. Then me, do I shout at kids? Do I blare out at parents? Do I do this? Because it doesn't add up with who you actually are. So it's like, it's okay. You can say how you are and who you are, but the reality is, do you ever step back and really look? Like, is this how it is? And it sounds morbid to say, but if you passed away tomorrow, what would people say about you? You know what I mean? And if it's like, oh, he was great, he was hard on the kids, is that what you want to be remembered by? Do you know what I mean? And I think we got to think about some of these things more often.
What about you've been a club coach for a while now. Do you ever think about coaching high school? I mean, they're always always open spots like every year at local high schools.
I did high school when I was really young. I was my dad's assistant. I did a JV team, and then I did it for a year locally here at Buena with Trisha, which was cool, and we had some success, pretty decent level success. And then I did it for 1 year at Rio Mesa because at the time there was players on my dad's club team I was helping with, and I don't know if they've done it since, but Rio Mesa actually won the league that year and went undefeated, which was cool for the players. Um, I like high school soccer. It's just a totally different experience,
Yeah.
and I think it's a different. The requirements, the time is totally different, and then the truth, mate, is the money. At the end of the day, I'm probably the first one on your podcast to ever say it's not about the money, but when you balance the time that you put into the money you get, I guess that's a better way of putting it. And then for me, I go to England every December.
Oh, that's right.
Last year I went to Berlin with my cousin. We watched Borussia Dortmund at home against P Madrid, and then we watched FC Union Berlin against PSG, or flipped. And then I'd done Milan, went to watch Liverpool, Milan, Juventus. So in the wintertime,
You
it's
take a
Champions
break.
League.
Yeah.
It's stadiums. I did Venice, went to Venezia to watch. I've done that. So yeah, high schools. I think it's good for the kids and good, but
It's totally different.
it's different, and I think depending on where you're located and the level of the club teams the kids play at, I think that the high school stuff is kind of blurred the lines. I would say to people, here's an interesting one, right? Is once the players leave their clubs and they go to high school, for the most part, club soccer does not say, "Hey, come and we're doing another tryout during your season, or we're doing this." So it's been interesting because the high school has shifted earlier, and I know for some players at certain age groups that are looking to go to showcases that might help them with colleges, they're already training in the morning with their high school. And then the club is expecting them to train. So they could be training 4 or 5 times in the morning with the high school, 3 times with the club, and then they go to this event, which could decide if they go to college to play. So it's a bit of a different one, the way the lines have become blurred a bit. But I think the high school experience is fantastic for kids.
Yeah. It's fun. It's special to be a part of your high school.
Well, you get to play with the people you go to school with. You get to get recognition at your school. You know what I mean? Whether you win or not, everybody wants to be a part of something. And our clubs have taken that kind of away because it's no longer the local kids that go to school together that play together. My club team was a lot of that. We all went to school. We met up on the weekends. We rode bikes. Like that was that experience. That experience is gone. So now the closest to that experience is the kids that get to play in the high school, and it's the kids that are in class with get to, acknowledged for what they're doing. And hopefully it's a positive experience because unfortunately sometimes it's not positive for the players.
Yeah. Yeah. Got to put the kids first.
You would hope.
All right, Joey. Anything else you want to bless us with?
Bless you with, I don't
Any other
know.
more wisdom? We've been going for about an hour.
Mate, you're going to have to edit a lot of this, but no, I just, you know, the one thing I want to say is I think everybody needs to step back and prioritize, the significance and importance of what the game of soccer should be in your life for you and your child, and it should be enjoyable, and they should come out of it feeling confident, male and female. They should come out of the experience with more tools to help them in future things, whether they're not a pro soccer player or not. But it needs to be overall a better experience and a positive experience. And we have to leave the players and the parents in the game better off than it was. But we as coaches have to be better. And if we don't look at it that way to do better to help kids, it's a sad state, but we should do those things. And I hope that's what comes from every person if they watch this, is they could say, Joey sucks as a coach, but you know what? I agree. Soccer should be good for the kids in a safe environment, should be positive. They should learn. And it doesn't mean you're going to be the best, doesn't mean you're going to win everything. But when you come out of that game at every level, you've had some more positive experiences, tools to help you where you go on to.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I've been speaking with Joey Hoffman of Surf and JHD Media. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, sir. Have a great weekend.
Enjoy your trip to England.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.